This is one of the original entrances to the church, and this is the front stairs that you would go up and go inside of the church to worship. Today we are at an 18th century church. This church is in ruins, but it was established in 1706 by the South Carolina General Commons House of Assembly. In 1706, the South Carolina General Commons House of Assembly said that there must be 11 parishes throughout the colony of South Carolina. St. John's Berkeley Parish was one of them, and Biggin Church was the main congregation of St. John's Berkeley Parish. So what this church served as was the main hub church, while smaller chapels of ease were spread throughout the Low Country, so parishioners could worship still as they would at the main congregation. Strawberry Chapel, which is a few miles up the road from here, is one of those, which served the town of Childsbury. So Biggin Church was modeled after Georgian architecture, and Georgian architecture relied heavily on symmetry and balance. We see a lot of that here in that Gibbs archway there, which is the main doorway to the congregation, and in the windows with those archways. These bricks are laid in Flemish bond, and Flemish bond was a very important aspect to Georgian architecture. Flemish bond, if you ever see that on a piece of architecture, that meant that you were quite wealthy. You could afford to have the bricklayer lay these bricks quite intricately to build your structure. So recently, within the last several years, they had to put this gate up around the church because people would come out and they would sit on the brick ruins. And as you can see, sitting on the brick ruins will ruin it even more. As I said, the church is laid in Flemish bond. We see coining here at the corners. Archways above the windows, this wonderful Gibbs arch, which stretched for the main entrance of the church. That was the original main entrance. When we talk about conservation and looking at this church, it is in desperate need of repointing. If you look here inside of the church, that is what we call spalling, with the brick kind of flaking off the face there. It looks like it may have been repointed with some Portland cement at one point in its history, probably before we truly understood how to repoint with lime mortar. So that brick has spalled off the face of it, leaving behind the harder mortar, the harder Portland cement. So at some point in this church's history, in this churchyard's history, this was a brickyard. If we look down at the ground here, there is a ton of brick ruins. Those brick ruins were probably from that period of when it was a brickyard. I also think that this portion right here, where we see these bricks in the ground, this may have been kind of a enclosed area for these graves right here. On the interior of the church, we see what looks like what may have been a vaulted ceiling. If you look and you see those holes right below the archways of the windows, that held former ceiling joists. So I can imagine the joists would have flown up in an arch type way to hold up the ceiling. So whenever you see something like that, you see holes like that, that's where the wooden joists once were. It also looks like the interior was coated in plaster at one point in time, which would definitely make sense for an 18th century church like this. You see this a lot in graveyards, in historic graveyards, where the headstones or box tombs have been destroyed. What I believe is happening here is looters believe that there is a body inside of the box tomb. There is absolutely no body located within these box tombs. The body is 6 feet down. These box tombs were basically just kind of a stylistic element, so you can have quite a long epitaph. If you look over here, this headstone was once there, and this box tomb has also been broken. I am also interested in gravestone conservation, and I have helped and aided in some of that, restoring gravestones with one of my former professors. I would like to point out this box tomb. This is the box tomb of Sir John Colleton Bart, who was the father of Louisa Carolina Colleton Graves, which her name is down here. You can barely see it. Louisa Colleton Graves. She was the owner of all of this land in the 18th century. I'll try and put a picture of her in the video as well. And I believe she is also buried here, Louisa Colleton Graves. She was the owner of this area, and she was also the owner of the land in which Fort Farallon was built on, which was a British outpost during the American Revolution. One way we know that all of this land was owned by the lady Louisa Carolina Colleton Graves is because of this map, a plan of Farallon Plantation. So as you can read here, it's a plan of Farallon Plantation, and it was commissioned by, right here if you watch my mouse, Miss Louisa Carolina Colleton, and she is the proprietor in April of 1789, and this is a map by Joseph Purcell, who was a surveyor. Joseph Purcell is actually really popular in the 18th century. If you go look through some of the old archives and everything, a lot of his maps are there from the Low Country in South Carolina. Purcell maps are pretty prominent around here. So looking at this 18th century map, probably done on some sort of animal hide. I'm going to zoom in here on the area in which we are. So in the video I talk about a British redoubt called Fort Farallon, and that is right here, which is still there today. You can go and visit it. But right across the Wadboo Creek over here, over in this area, is where Biggin Church is, where I am in the video. So she owned all of this land, and you can tell, like, there's a lot of stuff on this map. You can tell what kind of trees were in the area, water features that still line up with the landscape today, and a bunch of different things. Lands belonging to Isaac Mott, Esquire, over here, which is outside the boundaries of this map. Coordinates and everything. This big area here is just woods, pine lands. See, lots of pine lands out there. But this is how we do things. So if I did not know, for example, that there was a British redoubt here, I would take this map and georeference it and find the British redoubt, kind of like a treasure hunt. So that's kind of also how archaeologists work as well. Yeah, this looks like it's maybe a bridge. So yeah, let me know what you think of this map in the comments below. were rather thick because they were handmade. So how these bricks were made is they would be harvested from mud, probably from the Ashley or Cooper rivers nearby. They would mix in straw, dirt, a bunch of stuff, sand, and be placed into molds. Once they were placed into these molds, they were set out into the sun to dry. And once they were dried from the sun, they were called green bricks because they were green and not yet fired. They would then be assembled into a kiln, and this kiln was made out of these bricks themselves. The kiln would then fire the bricks, and the bricks which were closest to the fire would become the hardest bricks. Those were called clinkers. Those bricks are usually the hardest, and the ones that were also hard as well, but not extremely hard, were used for the outside facade of the building. These little specks, black specks that you see in the bricks are little iron deposits. Those little iron deposits would explode in the firing process, causing that speckled look that you see on the bricks. Some of these bricks are also glazed. Those are pretty hard bricks, which were closest to the fire. The darker bricks are also those types of bricks, which were closer to the fire. Weaker bricks would be placed on the interior and less noticeable places throughout the building. This was done in building culture all the way up through the 18th century and into the 19th century, depending on where you were, depending on the type of machines that you had available to you at the time. There are many reasons as to why South Carolinians decided to rebel against the Crown of Great Britain. One of them in specific was the brutality of some of the British soldiers during the American Revolution. One of those soldiers being Tarleton. Tarleton was a pretty pretty brash, I would say, or mean to the prisoners of war during the American Revolution. When Biggin Church was a supply depot and ammunition depot for the British Army, it also served as a prison. These were burial vaults. People were buried inside of these, and during the American Revolution, the soldiers came out and they turned them into prisoner of war prison cells, basically. If you look closely here, you see some scratches on the bricks. The legend goes that people were buried down in these vaults, or they were kept captive down in these vaults, and you can see the scratch marks of where they got out. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But this is one of those burial vaults, which was turned into a prison, or a prison cell for the British Army, where they kept Continental soldiers. The site of the burial vaults has actually never been excavated by archaeologists. So there's no telling what could be down there. There could be bones, there could be leftover Continental buttons from their uniforms, there could be many, many things. A lot of evidence that would tell us who may have been kept down here and why. Archaeology would serve this spot quite well. I am slowly being carried away by mosquitoes, so we are going to head on to Strawberry Chapel to show you one of the chapels of ease, which served Biggin Church and St. John Berkeley Parish here in Berkeley County, South Carolina. Thank you so much for joining me at Biggin Church, the main chapel in St. John's Berkeley Parish. From there, we are headed to Strawberry Chapel, as I mentioned in the video. And Strawberry Chapel has some very fascinating aspects to it. It's in a very wooded area, draped in Spanish moss, as you will see, and it's right on the river. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please let me know what you think of Strawberry Chapel in the comments below. Also, which is your favorite, Biggin Church or Strawberry Chapel? Thank you so much, guys. Please like and follow. This is Strawberry Chapel of Ease, the small white church in the background here. Strawberry Chapel of Ease was built in 1720 and it served the town of Childsbury. It was a satellite church or a chapel of ease to the main congregation, which was Biggin Church, where we just were. It was part of St. John's Berkeley Parish in Berkeley County, South Carolina in the 18th century. These satellite churches served as small chapels of ease so that congregants during harsher months of the year would not have to travel to Biggin Church, which I have already stated now several times. It is now starting to rain, so we'll have to go soon. That tomb that you see in front there is known as the Harleston tomb. The Harleston tomb was a holding tomb for the Harleston family. They would put the bodies inside of that tomb before they were ready for burial. This chapel actually still has services once a month, and you can come and attend service here at the chapel. And then afterwards they have a picnic. Several years ago when I was in graduate school, I had the awesome opportunity to help restore some of the stones here at the graveyard, or I helped transport them at least to the lab to get them to a point where we could restore them. This chapel has undergone preservation over the years by Moby Marks, who was one of my professors, and he has worked on the plaster on the exterior and making sure the church is nicely preserved. As I have stated many times and in my other video, no metal detecting or artifact collection is allowed because we want to be able to preserve our heritage. If you were to take an artifact from here, we would not be able to tell the story of the site. Right behind me was the town of Childsbury. Childsbury had several roads. It had a butcher shop. I think it had a school. It had the church, Strawberry Chapel. And archaeology has been done here as well. It is now starting to rain, so we are going to hurry up and finish our tour. Childsbury was off in this direction. There were many housing units, and then the river is off this way. There are wildlife threats out here. Wildlife threats out here include wild boar and other things. Mosquitoes, yes. They're really bad out here. So Childsbury was pretty much like a frontier town. This was the back country of South Carolina. This was way out in the frontier. This was the middle of absolutely nowhere. So when the land was granted to the family that owned this plot of land, this was the middle of absolutely nowhere here on the Cooper River. It was a strategic point to place a town up here on the bluff, and at one point a citadel was planned to be placed up there on the bluff, which would make sense because it's here on the river. It would be a great defensive fortification and a great area to defend the town. So Childsbury was also a trading town. They traded furs and pelts, and they also did other things. So here is another threat in the Low Country. This is an alligator. This is a baby alligator here in the water. And there is a little turtle that was right up here. That little baby alligator, isn't he cool? There's definitely much bigger alligators in the Cooper River. Another thing you want to be careful with when you are standing on the banks of the river here. They will pop out of nowhere and grab your little dog and drown them. There he is. Isn't he beautiful?
Just don't drop
Do 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 do.
There's another turtle. He's swimming away.
There is rain on my glasses. And we're going to get out of here pretty soon because it is raining. We are still in the middle of absolutely nowhere, like it was in the 18th century. There are some homesteads that are out here. There's also this really cool 19th century train. You see a train bridge in the distance there. So that's the Cooper River for you. This is more of the town behind me. Again, it's just an open field, but there were foundations out here. The whole town was out here. Again, it's pretty cool to see the extant piece of history out here. And this road leads directly down to the Cooper River. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my journey out to Biggin Church. While we were at Biggin Church, we talked a little bit about the history, the architecture, a little bit about the vaults, and some about the American Revolution. From there, we went to Strawberry Chapel. We talked about the town it served, the Childsbury, and the fact that it's on the Cooper River, which made it a strategic point to put a little town. Tell me what you think of my video in the comments below. Which one was your favorite, Biggin Church or Strawberry Chapel? Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the little bell to be notified when I drop new videos. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my journey, and I look forward to having you next time. This is Biggin Church. It was built about 1711 by a decree of the South Carolina General Commons House of Assembly, which was established in 1706. In 1706, they decided that there should be 11 parishes spread throughout the low country of South Carolina, or spread throughout the colony. Okay, I think we can still see it. In a few years, up and down the East Coast and South Carolina included, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the birth of our nation. It would have been 250 years since it would have been So here's a little bit of the truth here. I can't really see far away without my glasses. So it's like, you know, everything's blurry really far away. So if I aim the camera in the wrong direction throughout this entire YouTube video, that's probably why. Mosquitoes are getting kind of bad. Where's my good side? So now I am slowly being carried away by mosquitoes. They are pretty bad out here because we have a lot of swampland here in the low country of South Carolina. So Childsbury was also a trading town. They traded furs and pelts, and they also did other things. The town of Childsbury was an 18th century town, early 18th century town. And as my kitty cat comes up behind me meowing. Thank you guys for joining me at Biggin Church. From here we go to Strawberry Chapel. He wants to say hi. That's Meowser. Anyway, from here we go to Strawberry Chapel. And he's got an opinion about that. So at Strawberry Chapel we explore the reason why Strawberry Chapel is there and its connection to Biggin Church. So please like and follow. Tell me what you think of Strawberry Chapel and Biggin Church in the comments below. Meowser says hi.